thought we'd get away from all the internet drama and talk a little bit about politics. Don't turn off um, that word politics. It seems to be a turn off for a lot of people. Anyway, I've been watching some videos on YouTube, as I often do, and really I've been watching a lot of stuff to do with the Republican primaries in America and the system they have where they decide who's going to run for the presidency against the whoever the president is at the time. So in this case, Obama, and it'll be for the Republican Party. And there are a whole bunch of candidates, and I think many of them terrify me. To be quite frank, I think Mitt Romney embodies everything that's wrong with um, sort of vulture capitalism, and I think that people like Rick Santorum and his approach to homosexuals and the terrifying idea that state and the church don't need to be separate, that someone like Rick Santorum is it's an absolutely terrifying proposition of someone like that being in the White House. And why does it matter to me? I mean, I'm from Scotland. Well, it matters to me because at the moment America is still the reigning power in the globe. I think that's on the wane slightly. I think China absolutely are a superpower now. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think Russia will come back. You may, depending whether Europe gets through this, end up with a unified European state, all of which, all of whom rather, could give America a run for their money in terms of being at least economically the biggest power in the world, and certainly eventually militarily, just depending on how things go. What I'm basically saying is the world's going about to get a whole lot more dangerous. Anyway, that's a topic for another day. But at the moment, America still is the leading power in the world, and who they elect into office affects all of us. We see the effects of what happened when George Bush was elected, and I'm not saying it's obviously the American people's fault, not at all. I'm just saying that some of the presidents of the past have made decisions which have negatively affected many people around the world, as have the decisions of many leaders of other countries around the world. But it's more overwhelming when it comes from America ever since the breakdown of the Soviet Union. So that's why I take interest in it. Also, I think it's kind of entertaining as well, what happens over there. But more so just with the fact that it will affect us. Anyway, like I say, there's a bunch of candidates. I don't think any of them are really fit to be president of the most powerful country in the world. Certainly, I find many of their views quite abhorrent, to be honest. And I'm not like a total Obama guy. I think Obama hasn't done nearly enough. He hasn't went nearly as far enough as his potential was supposed to be. But you might get that in a second term because he's no longer running for office. Then that tends to be what happens when a president gets a second term. So there's Ron Paul, and Ron Paul is a Republican who caught my eye a few years ago when I think he was campaigning the last time round when John McCain won to be the nominee for the Republican candidate, and a lot of people took notice of Ron Paul, especially those in the left, because he seemed to be like an old school conservative or an old school Republican. Republicanism wasn't always about being extreme Christian, right wing in a lot of ways. It was far more moderate, and there are still a lot of people within the Republican Party who are fairly moderate, and a lot of people liked what Ron Paul was saying. And the reason that people liked what he was saying is because we've just come off the terrible decisions made by the likes of George Bush and over here by Tony Blair, and a lot of people have died because of those decisions, and it's debatable as to whether the world's a safer place for the decisions that they made. So when you have someone like Ron Paul come along who says do you know what? I don't believe in interventionist tactics. I don't believe in intervening in other nations' sovereign right to rule themselves in the way that they want to rule themselves. And you don't go in with armies. You don't start wars. You try to facilitate a change in other countries, and as they maybe evolve towards democracy, by leading by example how prosperous and fair and true your country can be, and maybe other ways, other avenues to put pressure on people rather than sending in armies. And yeah, for me that sounds great. It sounds fantastic, and I've always really liked and admired Ron Paul for those views. But there are certain things about him that kind of scare me as well, and I think they get papered over, but especially by the sort of more liberal leaning media pundits in America. And the reason is that he's a libertarian, and he very much believes in the individual over society. And I'll hold my hand up right now and I'll say that I think the individual is extremely important. I think individual rights are paramount, but I think that the overall aim for anybody should be in life to somehow have improved things for another human being. That's got to be the aim. And I'm not holding myself up and self-righteous and saying I've done that, because we're all, fragile creatures who are all prisoners of our own whims and etc. But we do, I think, have a duty to try and better conditions for those around us. I think to me, that just seems fairly obvious, to me anyway. And when you go down that train of thought, you end up in this word which a lot of people fog off as evil, which is socialism. Now, Ron Paul says socialism doesn't work. As a blanket statement, he says that. He says socialism doesn't work. So really what we need, for example, less regulation of free markets. Everybody should just be free to do whatever they want in terms of trading. And even though it's demonstrably true that the problems that the world is facing now is due to a lack of regulation. Laws were not put in place to stop banks from trading in certain ways, and he believes absolutely that there shouldn't be any regulation. He believes that there should be no national health service. Now, I come from a country where we have a national health service, and again, it leans towards socialism. And to finish my point on socialism, it's an umbrella term. There are loads of vastly different types of socialist ideology. So to just give that blanket statement, that's not really fair. That's like if you say you dislike all aspects of conservatism or anything like that, you're not really giving it a fair whack, because there are aspects of every ideology. You'll probably find little things in them which work in different types of that ideology, and socialism is no different. In the country that I come from, we have the National Health Service, and although the National Health Service has a lot of problems, it is a health service provided by the people for the people. It is rather bureaucratic in a lot of ways, and it's not that efficient, or not as efficient as it could be, but it's still a wonderful, wonderful thing. And we do believe that we should all pay a little bit more on our taxes, and that gives everybody the ability to walk into a hospital and be seen right away, or be seen. I've been in a casualty before where it takes you a while to get seen, but you will get seen, and you will get the medical treatment that you need. And you won't have to put your hand in your pocket for that. And you won't have to cripple yourself financially. And the likes of Ron Paul believe that this is somehow a bad thing, and that you can demonstrate that it doesn't work, even though when you look at the listings of the best health services around the world by the World Health Organization, it's pretty clear that pretty much all of the developed countries have a nationalised health service, but America doesn't. And the only reason I can think that America doesn't is because of the amount of money that's made from it. Some people make the argument that America has the best healthcare service. Well, it has the best, technologically, it has the best healthcare service if you have the money. But if you don't have the money, it's one of the worst, or it's very, very poor. If you watch the film Sicko, which yes is very biased in some ways, and paints the NHS as this incredible thing when it does have problems, but I think the message is very true, which is that nationalised rather health services is absolutely the way to go. And it comes back to this idea of community all looking after one another. And I do worry for Americans, because I think if someone like Ron Paul were elected, that I think many people would be left to rot, because it's kind of this only the strong will survive attitude, and libertarians will not say that. They'll paint anybody who falls behind as not applying themselves, and it's down to it's their own fault, but it's really not. And every system has flaws, and every system will be took advantage of by someone. I mean, certainly in this country we have the welfare system, and there are people on benefits who should not be on benefits. There are people who are jilting the system, but maybe that's worth, in fact, no maybe about it, it is worth having that if it means that people who genuinely need it get it. And it just bothers me that someone as educated as Ron Paul, and he really is, historically speaking, his history, his knowledge of history, his knowledge of American history and world history is fantastic. How he cannot see this, how he cannot see that there are aspects of socialism which absolutely work and work well, and they do not infringe upon the liberties of individuals. That this is what people seem to think, somehow it infringes. My liberties aren't being infringed upon. And Ron Paul says that healthcare is not a human right. Well, I'm sorry, I believe that it is. People will say, I think there are certain things that you should have a right to, that in this day and age, human society should have reorganised itself to be able to provide everybody with a roof over their head, food, clean drinking water, a safe environment to live in, healthcare when they need it, and freedom of expression and the freedom to vote. I think all these things are rights, and when you talk about human rights, it really comes down to how, if you want to define them as such, and what the majority defines a human right as. And I certainly define a human right as something which I think human beings are entitled to, and a health service is absolutely one of those. And he also says things like nobody's being turned away from hospitals. Again, that's demonstrably untrue. People are being turned away from hospitals. So I think a lot of the smokescreen which is coming from the media in America about, certainly the more left-wing leaning, or the liberal media, about how this guy's fantastic, he's got a lot of ideas that would really damage America. Yes, from an international point of view, very good. But from a domestic point of view, I think he probably would be a bit of a disaster, and I think there would be a lot of infringement on civil rights, especially, leaving everything up to the states. There can be an argument about, well, that's right or wrong. I actually do like devolved systems. We've got a devolved parliament in Scotland. I think you do need local representation, but I think some states would ban things like homosexuality, and I think there'd be a lot of problems. I think you'd have the civil rights movement all over again. Anyway, bit of a boring video. I apologise. It was just because I had watched a video of Ron Paul saying that if you didn't have health insurance, tough, and people from the the crowd screaming, "Yeah, let them die if they don't have it." And I can't understand how another human being can think that about someone else or want that for someone else. It has to be a case of helping one another, community, and being progressive in that way. I just can't see any other way for society to move forward other than getting our heads out of the sand and stopping ourselves from being so selfish and learning to make sacrifices for those around us. And if that means you have to pay slightly higher taxes so that someone else is poorer than you has a safety net, and God forbid anything should happen to you, but you've got a safety net, then I think that's a fantastic thing. And I think that America should have that as well. Unfortunately, it doesn't, and it's crazy that it doesn't, because it's still the richest planet in the world. That doesn't work. The richest country in the world, and it should be the most prosperous country in the world. But the problem is, there's the system stacked against people from prospering at the bottom. Anyway, what do you guys think about that? I'm sorry if I've sent you to sleep. I will go now. Goodbye.